It's interesting to hear an election observer say that the 2024 general election was a normal election, considering everything that happened leading up to it, with an incumbent president saying he's going to run, to a disastrous debate, and then an assassination attempt, and then a presidential candidate says he's not going to run. You have a coronation of the vice president to be the Democrats' choice, and a second assassination attempt of the Republican candidate, let alone the 4 years of all kinds of litigation brought against Donald Trump. I mean, really just a wild news cycle for the 2024 presidential election. And I think a lot of observers will step back and say, well, this was not really normal at all. Just all the different things going on and just how tumultuous the headlines were. So to see that the state of Illinois had an election that was, quote, normal is interesting, especially, considering the increased numbers of mail-in ballot requests. How did that pan out? More people early voting. How did that pan out? But overall, what was the outcome? Go to the Illinois State Board of Elections website where you can find the election results yourself, and we'll just kind of go through this together here so that you can navigate stuff. But here we go. We got the latest news. Let's go to press room. And information for voters. Maybe that's the best place to go. Election results. All right. Information for voters. Election results. So unofficial election results. No, we want even numbered years. So we'll click here. Bring up the election results. So these are the official 2024 general election results. And you can go through and actually see all the different candidates that were up for consideration, but also the House and Senate, judicial, county, specific races, precincts, and such. So what was the voter turnout? Well, I connected with Matt Dietrich, who is the spokesman for the Illinois State Board of Elections. And, well, he kind of gave us the rundown, the numbers. Let's go ahead and hear what he had to say about the ultimate outcome.
I guess the big story that people were curious about was, what will the turnout be, and will it match the turnout that we saw in 2020? And it didn't. We had a good turnout, 70.42%, which is right about what we had in the last two non-pandemic presidential elections. So those were both just a hair over 70%. Now, 2020 turned out to be a very strong turnout election, with almost a 74% turnout, and that was the highest that we had since 1992. And I think that's probably attributable somewhat to the pandemic and people being cooped up, maybe being more aware of the election going on. But the heightened interest that we all saw in the 2024 election sort of had given us hints that we might see that turnout match, and it didn't turn out to be that way. I think this turned out to be more of a quote unquote normal presidential election from a turnout standpoint.
So again, 70 point some odd percent turnout. A lot of conversation about what it meant for Illinois. Again, looking at some of the totals from the past few years here, it's the fourth lowest turnout in nearly 50 years. So 70.42, not as high as 2020. But you could see it kind of really was, right there around kind of normal, so to speak. Not a lot of activity down ballot. Nothing to really speak out that jumped out to Dietrich's eyes for down ballot stuff.
Since we didn't have any other statewide candidates other than the presidential election, there wasn't any single thing that jumped out as being particularly surprising or outstanding or anything like that. One thing I will say, though, that this election is noteworthy for, and that is we had a very high percentage of people casting votes early, going early in person. We had about 35% of the total vote cast early in person. And, normally we would have expected maybe 25%. I thought that we would see a really big jump in voting by mail, um, similar to what we had seen in 2020, where we had a third of the vote cast by mail. And voting by mail didn't get to that level, but we did see about 19% of the total ballots cast by mail this time, which is a pretty decent growth if you consider that, back in 2016, we only had about 6.5% of people voting by mail. Um, Obviously, it jumped really big in 2020 when everybody was trying to stay in, but we are seeing the people voting more and more, choosing to vote by mail. And the surprising thing I think about this election cycle, for me anyway, as a watcher, is I thought that vote by mail might surpass voting early in person. That wasn't the case by a long shot.
Again, pretty fascinating to see these numbers now official. They proclaimed it yesterday. The Illinois State Board of Elections held a meeting and proclaimed the official totals. And again, if you go to the Illinois State Board of Elections website, you can actually see for yourself all of the breakdown of the different jurisdictions. So go to the Illinois State Board of Elections website, Google it. I think it's elections.il.gov. Go to information for voters and election results, and you'll be able to see the even numbered years where you can catch those. So what's next now? Obviously, some places have already had their candidates who won in place. For instance, Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke is now the Cook County State's Attorney. So Kim Foxx is no longer there, but you've got others. The State House seats are going to be officially seated in mid-January. You've got the new U.S. Congress is going to be seated. So a lot of things are going to be happening here. But what about the presidential election? Again, the outcome of the presidential election was in Illinois, Kamala Harris getting 19 electoral college votes, getting 54.37% of the vote to Donald Trump's 43.47% of the vote. So what happens next for the Electoral College in Illinois?
The next thing that happens comes December 17th, and that's when the electoral votes, the electoral delegates for the state of Illinois will gather at the Illinois State Capitol and cast their ballots. Now, Illinois has 19 electoral votes, one for each congressional district and then one for each senator. So Kamala Harris won the electoral vote in this year's election. So our electors will go to Kamala Harris, and that's what will happen on December 17th.
But nationwide, former President Donald Trump making history to be the second president to win a non-consecutive term after he beat Kamala Harris, not just with the Electoral College, but also with the popular vote. So everything's going to be made official January 20th. After, I think, January 6th is when they actually do the congressional thing of approving the Electoral College, and then January 20th inauguration. A lot of stuff for us to cover in and out every day with you. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, get the headlines with thecentersquare.com, and like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for America's Talking Network.